Welcome to the Bridges of Meaning European community. This conversation is that I have with Jamie. Jamie is from South Africa, and he is now living in Prague and doing there his dissertation in mathematics. And he going to attend the London conference. Me and Jamie, we covered the topics of racism and race segregation. And then we moved to talk about the elements of aesthetics and the sublime and how can we experience love, God, and beauty. Is it something that is learned or is it something that happens spontaneously? The audio quality is at the beginning not that well from Jimmy's side, but he later switched to a better microphone and the quality is much better. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and goodbye. Adjust a few things, make it a little bit louder. I don't know. I've done actually a course in podcasting.
Oh, really?
Yes, I think it was just before the pandemic. It was the summer before the pandemic, so to 2019. I have a very good friend who is a podcast addict as myself from the early days, from like 2006 when the iPad just started. iPod. And
Yes.
I said to him, and both of us became friends at work because of Jordan Peterson. I was really itching to start a conversation with somebody about Jordan Peterson, and I didn't know with whom. Like nobody in Israel know who Jordan Peterson is. So I said, okay, I'll do something planned. I'll just take the book and start to do a podcast with somebody every single episode about the chapter. With the 12 rules for life. And I just found a guy in my work that is just interested in ideas and philosophy. And I said to him, like, oh, Roman, would you like to do a podcast with me? And he said, like, sure, I love podcasts. And we done 2 recordings, and it was horrible. I don't know why. Just I was too nervous. I was expected at the beginning that it will be like Joe Rogan or the NPR news radio or something. And of course it cannot be the first time. So we just stopped it, but we became really good friends because of it. So and after a few years, I dragged him to do a course with me about podcasting. So we went to a school that was doing courses for radio and audio people and like all this audio engineering. And one of the courses was for radio station DJs or whatever they're called.
Yes.
And because nobody took their course anymore, because nobody care about radio anymore, they start to do this transition to podcasting.
Right.
And so I've done this course and I learned a little bit about Audacity and all this noise stuff and how to reduce those kind of things. But I never applied any of those skills probably until now. So so the probably the video with Matthias was my first kind of interview and that I've done. So
I want
you go for a smoke,
and then we can start something. I suppose I shouldn't smoke on YouTube. That will one day in the future that will come back to bite me.
When your kids will see it and like make feel like, yeah, Dad, you are smoking.
Yes, you did that dirty thing.
Yeah. So, okay. So now when you are smoking and you are relaxed a bit, please tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to the Bridge of Meaning. What is your journey? How you came to these parts?
The normal way. I just found Jordan Peterson via the algorithm. I suppose, as like you, being a very interested in especially Christopher Hitchens and his videos at the time, right? He was just such a powerful orator.
Presence, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In fact, you know, these days, I sometimes just imagine what this free speech issues, where he would fall on these and what power his voice would lend to combating these people.
What do you think?
Well, I think he would see it coming or be afraid of them because he was always the principled against any kind of censorship.
Do you think he would have been one of the intellectual dark web people?
No, because I don't think he and Peterson could really stand one another.
Right? Yes, but in the intellectual dark web, at least in those 2 years or 3 years, there were other members. There's the Weinstein's brother. There's Sam Harris, which they knew quite well. There's Joe Rogan, who is a big person for free speech. So
yes, but I feel like Sam Harris, he would have been drawn into it in the same way. He wouldn't have. I don't think, you know. So the whole new atheist movement seemed to have fallen apart over the atheism plus stuff, right?
Not necessarily, because that's actually the last thing that I listened to from Sam Harris. It was his divorce message when he said, like, I just don't like Trump and fuck you guys, I'm out. Don't include me into this dark web stuff. So it wasn't about religion.
Yes. They would have been pushed to speak to one another, I suppose, you know, the more pro-religion. Peterson somehow unlocked a bind that there was in the atheist YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was always just debate after debate in which Hitchens wiped the floor with whoever stood against him. And Sam Harris also with his quick wit. And then it became stale, you know, it became boring like everything does after some months. And for me, Peterson unlocked that. So, and then I became annoyed at the political correctness stuff.
Before that, it wasn't an issue for you?
No, I suppose I was a good liberal before that. You know, university student grew up very liberal parents.
Mm-hmm.
But then the way that the political correctness plays out in South Africa against white people is a bit weird. You know, we are not a majority like in the US, but much of the same stuff. We certainly were the oppressors, right?
Yeah. What is that percentage of Caucasian in South Africa compared to the locals?
Mm-hmm. It's something between 10 and 20%, maybe 10 and 15.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit more than African Americans in the US.
Yes. Mm-hmm. A little bit more, I suppose, percentage-wise, but not by maybe one order of magnitude, but not more.
Yeah.
And we're not as many people, of course, but no one is. We're 50 million. altogether.
But tell me how the politically correct movement or influence is plays itself in South Africa.
Well, I suppose I did feel that feeling of not having a place, kind of the I'm not sure I was ever told this, but I had somehow absorbed that what you should do is make yourself as small as possible, have as little influence as possible, do give you should basically not exist somehow. And and sort of hearing
is this the attitude that started in the 90s, right?
No, I don't think so. The thing is, in the early 90s towards the 90s, so there was essentially when the wall fell, 89, the year I was born, was things started to change. Our then president gave a speech in which he basically said he's going to free Mandela and they're starting the process of democratization, I suppose. And it took until 1994, so 5 years, to organize exactly the details until we had the first real election in which Nelson Mandela won. Now, Nelson Mandela and that sort of ANC was very principled, right? Their fight was for equal rights. It was a universalist idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just we want things to change and just be treated as equals. But then, of course, from the beginning, there was redress on the cards. And it was, from the beginning, law, more or less. Yes, and especially in places like university acceptance and these kinds of things, so it became, you should not discriminate by race, but also slowly but surely these institutions that basically certify racial quotas came into existence.
Mm-hmm. And it happened quite quickly. So it happened during the 90s, almost to the other side. If there were certain exclusion before against the black majority, now it was toward the white minority.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's what apartheid means, segregation. So that was exactly exclusion and keeping separate. So all the good schools used to be white, and somehow you need to have the first black kids go into a all white school. So that's there certainly was a place to basically force the white schools to accept black kids and try to make this mixing possible. And obviously it's not that long ago, right? I'm the first generation of or we are people my age are basically the first generation that sort of grew. I was a small child that when things changed, and so by the time I got to school there were some black kids in my school, but not 80% of them were, but so it's slowly changing.
Okay. And by the end, when you move to university, is almost the same percentage as in the population, right?
Yes, that's what one expects. I suppose by now it is better, but it's not quite at parity yet. It's maybe you know, I don't think it's 80% black. Maybe now, maybe it is in some places.
Yeah.
I could actually look at the thing, but of course, the whole political class is more or less black now.
Yeah, I'm just well, this channel and at least the conference in Landau is named the Bridges of Meaning European Community, and kind of not you and not me are not
Yes.
Europeans.
Yes.
And in kind of a similar way, our countries is part of the West, or at least considered part of the West. Maybe like the black sheep of the West, but still considered part of the West. And both of our countries experienced some, let's call it, troublesome time during the years after World War II, and not like maybe Europe that. Well, it's hard to say because because everybody had something happen to them because of the Soviets, but still, still I feel that I don't know. I heard a lot about apartheid, but from different perspective. It was blaming the Israelis for something. So so I know I learned about the term and about South Africa's apartheid because it was thrown so much at Israel and at us. Like, what? And I remember as a kid, like, what is this apartheid or something like that?
And it's strange that they don't use the literal translation, which would be segregation, right? Because segregation is a period in America at which time, exactly as in apartheid, the races were segregated in law, at least in some states.
Yeah.
And all those pictures of, you know, signs on benches or public bathrooms saying white only and this kind of thing was in the 60s in the US as it was in South Africa. So I don't know, you know, it seems like it's a little bit
well, I'll because we are raising the topic, I do want to address it. When you put signs, put certain propaganda in not propaganda, you can say everything is propaganda, but when you put a certain rules in the newspapers, what you should do, not should do it to a certain population, and especially, like, as you said, signs in the streets, signs on benches or in shops, there's certain people are excluded, like in well, like, I don't know, in my imagination, it's also like this concept of Jews in World War II, like Jews not allowed here, just before they started to eliminate them. And when I understand that kind of segregation, I sorry, I actually understand, okay, that's a segregation. The thing that happened in Israel is when you were talking, I had the term in my mind and I want to say it, but it was it was, I will call it a sensible racism.
Okay. Well,
and what and what is a sensible racism? So after I said something and you just left, you're just like, I cannot deal with this Israelis, I'm just leaving.
No, I turned on my lights just for the video's sake.
So I remember after 9/11, when all the countries in the world start to reform the airports and their mandate of how to bring people and how to check them and how everything they are doing. To do that, they called for Israeli experts. So no, truly, like, because Israelis was doing it for years. So it wasn't, I remember like when we flying inside, like from Israel to somewhere or from other country to Israel, it's the same procedure. And we got used to, like, we knew that. And I remember flying inside the States, it was like taking a bus. Like you enter inside the airport, go to the entrance of the airplane, give your ticket, and then you fly somewhere. Like it was almost like a bus, and it was always surprising to us. And when those restrictions came to the airports, we, the Israelis, look at how the Americans are doing that, and it was just stupid to us. Why? Because they use this random machine who just pull grandmothers, and you need to check them with like the machines and everything, and you see like this 80-year-old grandmother like what they're wanting from me, and just like big black guys with like, ma'am, like do this and do that, like she's all scared. And we're just looking at this like, that just, what are you doing? Like, yes, you don't want to exclude people, I understand. And you don't want to I don't know, appear that you are racist, but like most likely that the jihadist won't be a 80 grandmother for England. Like that,
I know
that's and Israelis use that. And when I was in the military, like they used it was a very sensible things that they teach us during the check post. Look at the signs. If it's a woman, it's less likely. If it's an old woman, it's even less likely. Like, look, if he's nervous, if he's looking around, if he's like carrying bags, like standing suspiciously, not talking to anybody, but I don't know, like closed body language. And when you go to the airport in Israel, they do this routine check. And of course, if you are Arab, you are much more prone to harassment, of course, because they're doing a selective racism, as I called. And when the Russian just came to Israel, a lot of the Russians had a mustache and a beard. And Israelis don't have mustache and beards. Only Arabs have a mustache. And during the summer, you become very, very tan. And like Russians with a mustache. So they actually was pulled quite a lot, like, sir. And then he's like, what are you doing? Like, I just don't know Hebrew. What do you want? And it was like very, very cute how my uncle got used to being pulled a lot just because he had a mustache and was tan. So those kind of elements are part of this segregation, not segregation, but like sensible racism to the environment that you need to discern certain people. You need to differentiate between like more likely dangerous people and less likely dangerous people. And yeah, I don't know. I still think it's sensible. But
well, I mean, it is inevitable also. So, one does. I can give you a personal example. As a high school kid, I worked in a music shop, and part of my duty was to follow along people that look suspicious and see that they don't shoplift anything.
What? Part of your what?
I did a job, a part-time job as a high school student.
As a job, you needed to follow customers and
see.
No, so it's like a security guard. Well, so you made it sound like you were a spy for some corporation.
Well, it seemed almost, well, I was just a salesman. I was selling guitars, but we didn't have any security, and every now and then someone would walk into the shop and put something in their pocket or their bag and just walk out. And then you need to practice some discernment because you don't follow everybody around, or and so you only look for suspicious people, and you do that based on certain markers, right? Do they look poor? Do they look and I don't know, but this is, of course, So the way out is some kind of Christian ethic where even if you do such things for practical reasons, one should assert that so far as the law is concerned, humans are equal, and certainly as far as sort of morality and how you treat them and how you, you know, everybody has a sort of equal soul. And that seems, I basically believe that, and I that's a sort of principle that got drilled into me as a young man, and that I cannot easily let go of.
Continue how you reconcile between those two elements, the law and what is required, and the chance that you need to give every person, because you just described me in this job. So,
yes.
So try to connect them, how you reconcile the two.
Yes, well, I suppose the laws in South Africa are not actually formally equal in the sense. I mean, it is totally enshrined that if you have more Black people, you get certain tax breaks and stuff like this, right? But there's sort of the principle of the thing. When it comes down to principles, and laws, I suppose, are supposed to be based on principles, good principles, then you should not discriminate. So it would be something like, if we excluded only Black people from coming into our shop, that would be illegal, right? And in fact, excluding anybody from coming into the shop is basically illegal. But following somebody around or making a point of helping someone in the shop is not, that's to my own discernment. I don't think the law has anything to say about it. So I don't know. I suppose that's how I reconcile it.
So you were like in a difficult position because you
well, I
did
should tell you about this trend in in Cape Town last time I was there. It's this sort of hobo chic style. So you would go to some very nice uptown hipster bar, and most of the inhabitants of the bar would be dressed like homeless people. And that is to force on to make you become used to the fact that these people are not, or to make it sort of a safe space for them, and also to challenge us, or plebs like me who you know, would in some sense discriminate against that. But they are just as rich as I am, and they are visiting the same places that I do, and that kind of thing. And so after a while, I suppose you do get used to it. I never did. I didn't stay long enough, and Cape Town is a bit of a weird place. But have you have you seen this kind of thing before? Just
what exactly? Can you summarize your
a whole bar full of people dressed like homeless people?
Yes, we have quite a lot of Eritrean immigrants, illegal immigrants in Israel, because when the problem with Eritrea started, probably 80, no, it was long ago. It was just after I finished the military, so 2007, something around there. I remember working in the south of Israel, and I already saw a few dishwashers who were from Eritrea. And slowly, for the last 15 years, they came through the border with Egypt quite a lot, because we are kind of the closest, as we said, Western country by land. So it was very prime destination for them. And when I moved to Tel Aviv in 2010, it was quite a lot and very full of them. And around 2015, I lived in the most poorest neighborhood in Tel Aviv, which mostly consists of people from Southeast Asia. So it will be not Cambodians, but Philippines, from Thailand, Cambodia, and a lot of Eritreans. And I remember entering one of their bars, and it was very interesting experience because it wasn't a rich bar. It was a poor people bar with plastic chairs and weird music and very shitty TV somewhere in the corner, and there's nothing on the stand, but they still bring you a Thai beer, which is the most cheapest beer you can find. And I don't remember. I think we just entered with a few friends because we were locals, and it was a very weird experience. But
I was also a bit taken aback when I saw that so my reactions was the problem. The thing is, it's not a poor person. It's a person. It's not a poor bar and it's not a poor person, right? They are dressing this way in order to challenge my perception, right? So it is a sort of style aimed to make a message at me, and I didn't appreciate being preached to. But then,
okay. So I get that. Okay, so your experience is completely different. You're saying it was almost inside this cultural phenomenon that supposed to be virtue signaling to white people, like look at us, like look at us, and I dare you to judge me. Something like that.
That is That's exactly what it was. And I sort of didn't appreciate being preached to, and yet it did work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what goes through my mind is something like, what's up with this guy? Why is he here? Is he gonna take my phone? Right? And this does happen. This is South Africa. You actually have to watch out for this kind of thing all the time. And then you realize, oh no, he's just doing this so that I look at him this way so that he can look smugly back at me. Then you're extra pissed off, but eventually, I don't know. I suppose that is actually not such a bad thing. One shouldn't, it's strange. One can see the humanity in a person while at the same time being afraid of them, for example.
Yeah.
And this is something I try to practice, so not necessarily to give money to beggars, but to acknowledge beggars and their, not to simply walk past them with blinders on.
Yeah, but it's scary because when you notice a person and he sees that you noticed him,
that invites a certain
it's invite a certain interaction. And it's not just from a poor person. Like I had few interesting interaction like that. I went to a friend's house for dinner, and his wife's dad was an ex-KGB person. And I'm a very open, I don't know, like soft liberal philosophy major person. And he just started to ask me questions, but with this tone, like with this tone that that the torture is after you finish to ask the question. And I sitting there in this dinner table and I'm sweating and I'm like, okay, so what are you going to do about it afterward with your philosophy and your thoughts and your ideas? And it was already a few minutes of like grueling questions, and I was just nervous more and more and more, and then his daughter saved me and like said like, Dad, stop with this with this kind of talk. It's like it's just a young guy. And I felt so relieved afterward, but it's just you came across a person that is so foreign to your perception and from such a different world, and you feel the danger. You feel the danger just by him asking question. And it's hard to explain why. It's because of the tone, because of, I don't know, mannerism, how he sits, how he smell. I don't know. It's a lot of those elements.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not just from a homeless person. It can happen, yeah, with different many people in our lives, and in one sense, you want to give this Christian compassion.
Yes.
You want to give this, okay, this is a soul, and I should be there with him. But on the other hand, you're afraid that you won't be able to handle the pressure from this person's reality.
Yes. But probably isn't there an overriding ethic that says connecting with any person, even a dangerous one, even a scary one, like an ex-KGB guy, yes, or it does, it makes you vulnerable, but the ethic is something like that will be the most worthwhile way to approach any relationship, any connection, or yes, something like that. Without being stupid, so if there's Peterson shouting in the back of my mind saying, don't fool me twice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
without being naive.
If I use Peterson's way, and I will bring two elements. One of those is advice toward a family member that is doing suspicious stuff to you. And what Peterson is advice is like, shut up, don't give any information, and just watch him, because you will and just watch and see how he reacts towards you, and eventually he will say something about you that will surprise him and surprise you, because it's a new thing that what he thinks really about you. So this is advice about a family member that you have certain conflict with. The other advice from him, which is more akin to this a Christian notion that every single person is innocent, like in front of the law, until proven guilty. And in that sense, you treat every person with this, whatever he's saying is saying to me the truth, until I can prove otherwise.
Yes.
So I accept his reality and his truth as it is. So this is Peterson advice, and it makes sense. And another element, and that's I will maybe bring from my personal practice, and I put a lot of work in my life to understand how to be a good conversationalist, how to speak with people better, how do I melt the ice between us fast, When I was younger, it was more sinister because I want something for the other person. If it's were like a date, or if it was like for him to see me in a better light and give me a certain boons, but this technique, it's still inherent to me, and you actually can see that in the conversation that I have with other people. What I do, one of the elements, I will bring something very uncomfortable about myself and put it on the table. I will tell a stupid story about myself. I'll tell how I'm like not smart enough, not interesting enough, like I have no idea what I'm doing, and I just try to embarrass myself in front of the other person as fast as I can. because after that he will see, oh, so like he's not a poser. He's really truthful by how he's presenting himself.
Yes.
And it usually works. Usually works.
I think I tend to do that naturally as well. But I never thought about it directly, and that would open up a space for conversation, or for easier conversation. Nice. That's a cool.
A relatedness.
That's a cool trick.
Yeah, a certain relatedness. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it's awkward. But there is something like that. And if we go back to our problem, and that the problem of a dangerous person.
Yes. I'm just closing my blinds.
Go ahead.
I've got you in my ears.
If we return to our original question of a dangerous person, I am quite hesitant to be vulnerable in front of them. And
for good reason, right?
Or not, as you argue, and that's a valid point. Maybe you be like because there's two sides to this coin. First of all, if you present yourself as vulnerable, you open yourself to being, oh, I can exploit this person. But on the other side, you can say, oh, I can be open with him and truthful to him. But it's a problem how we relate to those dangerous people.
Yes, let's see if we can turn this to, if I suppose there is some third person watching us or in this conversation. When it comes to meeting people at our at the festival, do you think there will be anyone dangerous?
I'm sure there will, because if you take a percentage of 100 people, and 3% of the population is psychopaths, and so it's
self-selected from
it's self-selected, so probably 1 or 2 people in Landau will be a psychopath. Let's hope that that it's a social that he went through socialization, so he's part of the community, so he's a functional sociopath in the world, and not just a random one. But this danger is there. I'm trusting to Paul. Like, Paul dealt with so many schizophrenic people and people with big problems. So I'm vetting my people through Paul.
But then there's also I think probably the biggest as a mathematician and being online a lot, there's a sort of, the most likely thing is that there will be more autistic people than in the typical population. just because I think that's how YouTube sort of self-selects.
Maybe. Just 1 second. I'm back.
Yeah. When is your? Is it? Why is your? Anyway, I suppose we're gonna cut the.
No. It's like who's going to cut anything? Like no. My policy is like Joe Rogan. The maximum amount that I will do is to cut the beginning and the end. Just to it to be smoother, and then also I like this wackiness that happened in the first phrases. So
okay.
I'm
looking for a place. I'm seeing the dots on my face when I'm here.
Yes,
and
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And
unfortunately,
over this.
Your lighting is horrible.
Nothing I can do.
That's okay. That's okay.
This is the waste.
Have you so to your question, you said okay, so there'll probably be a lot of autistic people just because of the nature of the YouTube algorithm.
Yes.
And you said, I think in the SGRE that we had on Friday, you said that you watched my video with Renee.
Yeah.
Okay, and I asked this question there about the algorithm that and the demographic of people on the Discord and how it connects. It's self-selecting to a certain demographic of people. And I tried to argue that maybe part of this bridges of meaning, meaning crisis problem is kind of related to, first of all, to the Protestant world more than to other, and second to a European descent, as you are and I am. And I was I just want to explore more in depth this element, and I wanted to hear your thoughts because you did listen to the conversation, and I wanted to hear what do you think about that? What do you think about the Bridges of Meaning community demographics?
Well, I think the one dynamic that I wanted to get your thoughts on is basically, and it's something that I see when traveling from South Africa to the Czech Republic, right?
Where you now at?
Where I'm now at, yeah. So clearly, a large part of the YouTube algorithm is geographic. There is, your IP is logged, and it tells the algorithm where you are. And even if it doesn't know anything about you, it gives you geographically targeted things, right? So in that sense, part of the reason, I suppose, why, let's say, Paul's channel hasn't spread is that the algorithm thinks that these places have it, right? But I think it is, the algorithm is such that, you know, I watch way too much YouTube, right? And listen to way too much podcasts. And so it knows that there's one IP at least here in the Czech Republic that listens to a lot of Paul van der Kley, right? And so it might try one or two or some of these videos, maybe throw a bit of Peterson or something to someone around me.
To test the water with you.
And it wouldn't, right? It probably does a little bit of this totally randomly, but the fact that I am here and that I use it so much will probably mean that maybe I've caught one or two other people in the Czech Republic that might have gotten into this just because I'm here by virtue of how the algorithm works. And that might be like, so I don't know. One should actually ask Matthias so he just sort of started the German-speaking Discord channel without knowing how many people there would be. And he found enough to actually start a meetup group, right? But the question is the fact that there are some of them mean that the algorithm will create more of them, right? There's a sort of just a positive feedback loop that he started to spark. The algorithm realized, hey, somewhere here in Germany, there's a bunch of people interested in this stuff. So it will suggest it more to similar people. And if you're sort of persistent in your usage, then you might be able to influence it.
It's a very interesting. I never thought about it like that. That the algorithm is not just pulling you toward a certain interest. It also pushes other people towards you. So whenever you have, let's call it, the courage to start something, you automatically will say to the algorithm, okay, I exist.
Yeah.
And then it will start to push people on you and force, let's call it, force you and your community to grow.
Create a new bubble, right?
Create a new bubble
to land in. Yes.
and it's not just if I start let me find something weird. People who like goat hoofs and like their pictures of them on Instagram, then and if it's not just that it will bring all the people who are interested in goat hooves, but actually create a certain demographic that is interested in goat hoods. Wow, that's so hard to say. So goat hooves.
Yeah, of all the words in the world.
I don't know. It just I don't know. I try to be weird. It's automatically I went to the sexual stuff, but I said no. I need to keep it PC.
Of course. Yeah.
So in that sense, our community is maybe I formed the question wrong. It's not how we find the people who are experiencing meaning crisis. It's how we convince, or how the algorithm convinces other people that they are having a meaning crisis.
I suppose to be slightly more charitable, one can say, because there's something here, right? There's something to the meaning crisis. It is somewhat real. Yes. And you may be right. It might be a cultural thing, but I don't think so. I suppose there are places where it doesn't arrive. Anyway, we can talk about that a little bit more, but it is a sort of, to me, it felt like a realization. Okay, let me give you a story.
Before you start with the story, I need to open the door for my dog. So just a second.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Story time.
So what I'm trying to explain is that much of this stuff is stuff I knew all along or thought all along, and somehow it got some new words or it got explained to me in a new way, right? And so I feel like there is something here that was, it is not simply the algorithm convincing me. It is the algorithm pointing me to people who are explaining real things, at least sometimes. The algorithm is convincing me of one thing, and that is to watch more videos. Okay, that much I know. But apart from that, the thing that I am hungering for and searching for, and that is keeping me glued is trying to sort of unlock something in myself, which is, let's just say, the meaning crisis is a good way of explaining what that problem is, right? And so the example I've got is, as a 20-year-old, something like that young man, I had became very cynical, okay? Just decided I felt the best I will ever feel, okay? It is done now. It's all downhill from here. And I don't know. It's just long enough after teenage years to be nostalgic about it, something like that.
Yeah.
And I then made a sort of philosophy or theory of some kind, which put three things together. And these are things that are essentially impossible to get. And this is how I thought about it, right? And it was to be able to experience beauty, right? To feel that experience of feeling what you feel when you realize something is beautiful, or when something reveals itself to you as beautiful. The other one is falling in love. And the last one is a sort of religious experience. Let's say, what are the right words?
Sublime.
Maybe, yes. Surrendering to God or something like that, or whatever the it doesn't matter. Anyway, there were these three things, and they were all these feelings, and they sort of feel great in a strange way. Well, they are the height of emotion, but not necessarily good, right? And the trick about all of these is that you cannot convince yourself to so I explained them as essentially impossible things because there's no way to reason yourself into them. There's no way to convince yourself of them. And the more you analyze, the less likely it becomes, right? So how do you fall in love again, right? There's no, how do you do this? What will you say to yourself? How will you, right? Even just saying that you need to be open in some kind of way is already sort of creating a problem, right? And similar with beauty. How do you, if you don't find things beautiful, how do you get yourself from where you are to a point where you can't see beautiful things? And anyway, so I just sort of sat with this philosophy for like 10 years, right? And it sort of went into the background, discovering Peterson, this kind of thing, opening up different avenues. And eventually I listened to some Vervaeke video in which he explained the difference between the being and the having mode, right? The having mode, these are things that you can get and manipulate, right? Whereas the being mode has this sort of becoming and growing aspect to it, right? And suddenly all of this clicked into place. I was exactly so fully in the having mode that I was trying to have these things, in some sense, trying to have feelings, I suppose, which is the worst. And that's not, you cannot do that. They don't belong to that realm. They're in a whole different way of being, in a whole different mode of being. And that is the being mode, where you sort of need to grow in this openness, right? And sort of the experience of that growth is to feel beautiful, and reciprocal opening is the experience of love. And there's this sort of ultimate version of that, which is religious. And suddenly it all clicked into place. And so to me, it felt like, man, that was very useful for me. It explained everything, and it didn't feel, I mean, the algorithm gave me this, right? and it didn't convince me of that. It actually opened something up to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's so.
First of all, thank you, Jamie, for that. It was beautiful, but I want to maybe not push on that, but I want to explore it a little bit, because I was thinking about and I'm not just, I put this like the Sublime. I said the Sublime because it happened when I was studying at university, and we went through Kant's third critique, and in it it's exactly addresses the aesthetics, the feeling of God, and well, part of the aesthetics is love as well. So, and he called it the Sublime and the experience of the Sublime. And I do think you can train that in certain way.
Okay.
And how? And
yeah.
I'll try to maybe argue it for two different elements, on two levels. First is you fake it until you make it. So you cannot experience the experience of God, but you can start to exercise the routines of a person who believes in God. And then there's more, you start to go to a church or to a mosque, you start to practice those elements, maybe you incorporate the fast in your life, you try to speak with him and listen if he answers to you, and to maybe to some people he will reveal himself and will start talking to you, and you will feel this deep connection to God. Then again, with art, I think is the same. There's a certain practices that you go through, and I need to show off a little bit. So this is Bruegel, and I know it's in reverse. So I'm not an artistic person, not interested in artistic from a young age. I'm more interested in ideas. But about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I lived with two friends of mine, a couple of friends who were art students. And just by being in their presence and going to see different paintings and discussing art and being surrounded by art and like seeing all the body covered with tattoos, and the girl became a tattoo artist, and just being surrounded by those people, I start to notice, oh, I look more deeply at even just at furnitures and asking, oh, is it beautiful or not? And just as like this kind of exploration said, okay, like maybe I should start doing with paintings. Maybe I'll start like look at them and just ask myself what it makes me feel.
Yes.
What is it speaking to me or not? And this practice that I learned a month ago from Bernd Power's video of a lecture of Hans Hochmacher, the Dutch professor of art, and his advice about how you go to a museum and how do you watch pieces of art in a museum. And his advice is you go really fast and scan all the museum. You just enter the room and exit and go all over the museum in half an hour.
Okay.
And after that, you go to a quiet place, you sit down, you close your eyes and start to remember what kind of rooms jumped into your attention. And then you picked like two rooms.
Yeah.
And then you go to those rooms and you do the same thing. You go and look at every painting for like a split of a second. And then you sit in the middle of the room, close your eyes, and okay, so what of those paintings said to me, look at me? And then you go to this painting and you sit there for 45 minutes, an hour and a half, and looking at one painting, not at the whole museum, because the whole museum didn't spoke to you. What spoke to you is this room and this painting. And you just sit there and being with it. But this is the element that you said. It's being with the stuff. But you need to be in the geographical location with this stuff. You need to enter the church.
Yeah.
My first experience of awe from God was when I was 13 and I went with my parents to Spain, and we were in Seville, and this is the cathedral of Seville, which is probably the second biggest cathedral in the world, or third or something. And I remember standing there, and it's like blackness on the top. You cannot see anything, and just columns go beyond.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there as a kid and like, oh, that like God is here and I can feel him on my shoulders right now. But you need to be in the geographical location of Seville Cathedral in Spain, because you cannot, it's very hard to find God here in this room.
I know, yeah.
And that's maybe my point about that. It's not only a thing that is not, you cannot train and really feel. It's a being experience, as you said,
and
really
I think
nicely.
So just to connect that, the ritual and the practice stuff, so that's another Vivekism, is that ritual is serious play, and that the way to overcome this sort of existential angsts is through that imaginal serious playing, and so clearly that resonates well, especially because the thing holding up the experience of God is often this Kierkegaardian leap. And yeah, if the vampire example is an interesting one, but maybe that is the real application. Or this.
No, please tell it. What is the vampire example?
If someone comes to you and tells you, I can make you a vampire, right? And you need to decide that some days or some months or whatever, and I'll just bite you and you can be a vampire. How do you make this choice? And the problem is, you don't know what it's going to be like to be a vampire, right? You don't know what you're going to miss from being a human. How is it possible for you, where you are, to make the choice to be there, being a vampire? And the answer is something like, well, why don't you live like you are a vampire for a month, right? Only go out at night and don't see the sun and drink blood only, or something. I don't know. Kill some things, I don't know what. But you understand, that at least gives you a little bit more of an informative choice. You will never overcome it, but at least that's the only way. And of course, the real example would be this sort of Kierkegaardian confrontation, where you need to make a leap, and how do you make the leap? And somehow practice is a thing. And I wanted, for your and the other people's benefit, to maybe explain my faith journey at the moment.
Please, yes.
So I grew up in a Dutch Reformed church in South Africa. And there are sort of 3 of them in South Africa, but I suppose I'm in the mainline one, if that makes any sense.
Is it Anglican?
No, it's like Paul's church, essentially. It's Paul's church got split off from the Dutch church and ours also. Except he's in North America and ours are in South Africa. And I just grew as a normal kid, but then I was sort of an early doubter, an early thinker. And my dad is also quite an intellectual person, and he was sort of our Sunday school teacher. So I spent, I suppose, many high school or early high school years just debating stuff with him and talking through stuff with him, and ended up being a sort of strange atheist that still went to church but felt uneasy about some of the dogmas, but knew that there was something there. But later in high school, I started playing in the church band, guitar and singing later. And essentially throughout my whole life, that has been one constant. I've kept doing that more or less. And even if I didn't really want to be there, even if I didn't agree with a single thing the pastor said, you know, at least I had this playing the music thing. And I had some community with the band members and that kind of thing. And there was some real connection there. And we made, after many years, you make pretty beautiful music and so forth. And it's a nice ritual also. And at some point I just did it out of sort of feeling guilt for the, you know, the band leader basically guilted me into it for many years, until later in life I realized that this is actually a very nice thing to have in your life. And then I moved to Prague, and there I couldn't find a English Protestant church. I suppose there will be some more evangelical Protestant churches here. But I basically just Googled English service in Prague, right? And the one that seemed most active, especially at the time, was, its full name is the Church of the Lady Victorious and the Infant Jesus of Prague. Okay.
Excellent.
Well, so it's mostly known as the Infant Jesus Church because, and I don't understand what the Infant Jesus is, but apparently there's some miracles associated with it, and it's sort of a fad within the Catholic world. Anyway, and I just started going there. Also, I was listening to Peugeot and so forth at the time, so I thought, man, while I'm here, I can go to some big churches, old churches, and see what the liturgy is all about. And I did that, and eventually reported for choir duty. I just sort of went up there, and it turned out there were all Filipino women, right?
Great. That's,
Yeah.
I like where it's going.
And they sort of adopted me. And I started singing a bit with them until I can start, you know, more or less singing the Kyrie and the formal things that we repeat every week, without the book. And then they saw on Facebook that I play the guitar, and they said, hey, but we're missing our guitar player. He's been gone for so many years, and we love these songs. He should come play guitar for us. And then I just did it, and now it's me standing next to the choir bench, and all of them at more or less my height right next to me, and learning some Catholic songs. But most of what they actually play is old Hillsong songs, exactly what we play back home. So it's not that different, but now it's been basically a year of me doing the liturgy, and I don't do it fully. I mean, I don't think I'm allowed to. I suppose I need to, anyway, I need to follow the steps before I can take communion. Plus, being part of the choir, I can easily, they all take communion afterwards. So I just sneak out then. So I've been exploring this, and the whole point of telling that story was basically to say that even after a year, only after a year, I've started understanding how just doing the liturgy takes you sort of deeper into the experience. It's not in my bones, right? It is totally volksvreemd, totally strange to me. And yet I knew intellectually that it had something to offer. And in the beginning, it was just memorizing stuff. And there's lots to memorize if you've not done anything apart from the Lord's Prayer and the confession. No, not confession, the creed. And those I know in Afrikaans mostly. So I had to learn it anyway in the English. And I still can't manage the full creed, but whatever, not in English. So, and eventually it starts, you start emotionally expecting, or something within you expects the story of the liturgy to happen. And there's this initial confession, and then a praising, you asking for mercy, and then you give glory, right? Or you're praising, and then singing a psalm and singing a hallelujah before and I only recently found out how to do the right gesture with the crosses before the priest starts speaking the third reading. The stuff. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Catholic church?
I can tell, like, small experience that I had. The first time that I went to this small Catholic church that I have near me. It's a student town, so most of the people that going there is a postgraduate or doctoral students who from Latin countries, not Latin countries, from Catholic countries. So it's mostly Polish, Italian, and those kind of folks. And I'm like I am, and I was baptized to the Orthodox church, and but I grew up mostly secular, but I still consider myself an Orthodox Christian. And I'm sorry, that's the way that I was brought to Christendom. So I'm okay with going to Catholic church and everything. I think I feel myself as a Christian, but it's like was bothering and during the service I'm doing the cross as the East Orthodox. So you go first, touch your right shoulder, and and the priest doing the service like doing it like that, like that, and I'm like standing there. No, I'll do it as I want to do it. Yes. And actually, maybe I need to ask somebody. Somebody told me that the Catholic Church changed it during the 15th century or something around there, because they used to do it as the Eastern, and they changed it. And I need to ask somebody.
Why?
I have no idea. I need to ask on the Bridges of Meaning Discord why they change it and what's the meaning of it, because I just don't understand. But it was funny, like the priest, like,
my priest, I like him, and I sometimes ask him questions. He has a sort of pretty good symbolic understanding, this almost mystical kind of thing, but he doesn't like talking about the intellectual stuff, right? And especially explaining. So I'm like, well, I haven't crossed myself ever in my life. I don't know what it means, right? And he's like, but you believe in the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, right? Like, yeah, it's still part of our dogma. So yes, no, that's what it means, right? And in fact, he didn't even want to say that much. He was happy to just like, you just do it. You just follow along, look at what the people next to you is doing and do the same thing. And after a while, you will get it, right? And it's nice that, he's kind of right in the end, right? It took me a while.
Yes and no. Yes and no. No, because we just explore it considering the sublime and beauty. That those two elements need to be there. The elements that you follow along, but you all also striving to understand. So like this striving to understand art is part, it depends if it's part of your role, like let's say this role in the world, to your personality trait and your way of being in the world. Is it part of your being in the world is through the intellectual understanding? If it is, well, the church has a place for you. Maybe it's not your priest, but you has this like big Jesuit movement, which is exactly for people like you,
right,
and people like us in the Bridges of Meaning.
Right.
So it's not.
And it
just...
seems the Augustinians are also interestingly close to what
so there's nothing bad about it. Like, okay, so why do I cross myself that way or that way? Why do I eat this shitty bread? Why do this wine is that way and not this vintage from France? Like, you can, and those are valid questions, because your attention and your divine attention, because it's this is like the sun is the representation of this logos, of this attention that picking stuff from the world that jumped in your attention. If it came to your attention, then it's a valid point to ask, to pursue and to explore.
Okay, so I want to explain to you this dynamic and see if you understand it, or so my young self, if I heard you saying this, would have objected and said, you know, at some point I really experienced the world as beautiful, right? And I don't know what happened, but I really want to experience the world as beautiful again. Okay, my want is there, and I know that there's something deeply true and worthwhile there. Okay, and everything I read just convinces me more about it, and the more I think, so I want this. But then ruminating on wanting it, it's sort of, the problem is it needs to sneak up on you. If you look for it, you cannot see it. If you look for it, you cannot find something beautiful. You have to sort of be unaware, or sort of be caught off guard. It needs to catch you off guard. You need to be thinking about other things, or you need to be just living somehow. And then you actually actively looking for it seems to destroy the experience itself. And so in what you explained, there is this moment of waiting for what jumps out at you in your attention, right? And that is different than forcing something, right? It is at least a moment of, so I don't know how to reconcile these fully, that argument of not needing, or the act of wanting it makes it impossible. That is still a thing that I know it's not quite true, and I know that there's a place to stand where it makes sense why that is not true. But it still sneaks up on me sometimes, thinking that I shouldn't want this. And you can eventually, if you keep on practicing that ritual, right? I don't want to, you get to these regressions of, at some point you say to yourself, okay, so I really love seeing beautiful things as beautiful, so I will actively try to do more of that. No, the fact that I want this makes that I cannot find something beautiful, so I should stop wanting it. Okay, then at some point you don't want it and you don't experience it. Okay, and then you start wanting to want it again, right? And so forth, and you can really get yourself in a bind with this kind of thinking, and at some point it needs to open up, but now there's layers to peel through. And I'm sort of afraid of that somehow. It's never worked for me, this active, even meditation never worked for me. It became just a form of denial. Just, I'm not thinking, or I don't want to, I'll just block everything out and repress everything, as opposed to sort of allow everything to pass through. Anyway, that was a a kind of reaction and a pushback that I.
No. That's an excellent question. It's an excellent question, Jamie. It's. I'm feeling that I touched on the answer when I was talking about the cathedral in Seville, but I'll try to repeat myself in other words and try to explain it. So, as you're saying, it's almost like you cannot look at true beauty straight on. It's always in the corner of your eye. And if you follow it, it just eludes you.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I agree with you that while studying art, I'm putting in the quotes, you're training your eye to see those elements. You know how to break down. You know how to understand certain styles. You found them familiar and in certain manner, but this is being a scholar of the art. It's not experience it as something that punches you in the stomach. And I think the way that you do experience it is and I'll go a little bit to Plato. So okay. Plato's idea of remembrance, it's in his dialogue Meno, and in it he's saying every knowledge is just remembering of something. I'm not going to repeat what Plato said. I'm taking it a little bit my own angle. When you study art, you prepare the ground for a certain revelation like that to appear. It doesn't mean that you will go to a museum and that wake up in the morning and saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to the museum. I'm in Prague. This is the most beautiful city on earth. I will go there and have this ascended experience because I supposed to feel like that because I trained myself so hard to feel that. It won't work like that, but because you trained your eye, you trained to notice, to see, to experience this, you trained your logos in a sense. So in the same manner as Peterson talking about Pinocchio. So in Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket is your conscious, the conscious of Pinocchio. And Jordan Peterson saying it's not just Pinocchio needed to start to listen to his conscience. His conscience learned how to be a better conscience. Okay? So in here is the same manner. You not just learn how to notice the sublime. It's your experience of sublime and also elevate, like it's climbs to a higher level. And then you won't experience it if you try to find it, but you put so much time in studying like Bruegel and looking at the architecture and art, and you didn't experience this feeling. But then you accidentally went to New York and you went to visit a friend and you're in the subway, and then there is a certain moment when the mythos and the reality and the physicality connects, when the lighting is correct, the train is just passing, and you look at some graffiti that some kid drew, and you get this oh my God, this is the most amazing thing that I ever seen. And you will never be able to tell other person in the universe, why is that? Because God revealed itself to you, because you put the work, you trained your eye, you learn how to see this classical, beautiful, I don't know, art of or European art, and then you have no idea when it will strike you. And that's maybe the element where I do think I'm emphasizing and try to emphasize it again, when the physicality and being in the world, if it's going to Seville, if it's going to this shitty station in New York, this physicality and the mythos that you engulf yourself in meet. And when they're meet, is this the same thing as I just today released this conversation with Felix. This is exactly the moment when the resurrection happened. It's where mythos and the physicality of a physical place in time where Jesus was dead and he resurrected meet. And can we explain that moment? No. But this is the moment.
Yes.
And
yes. No, amen.
I'm sorry. I saw that you're smiling so much. I'm just seeing your reaction, how you're reacting to some, I don't know, YouTuber or podcaster.
I suppose so. That was on that level, man. That was good.
he is my teacher, so I stole a few things from Peterson, how to present some preaching.
Oh, it's strange to. I haven't gotten into Discord actually. I've tried a number of times. You know, if I get way lonely, I try to do the Discord, but on the one hand, I'm too afraid, right?
I think I saw your icon before on the voice chat, and maybe we even had a conversation briefly.
That's possible. Yeah.
Because I do remember it. But
anyway, I've dipped in my toes only like once every 6 months or something for the past 2 years. And yet I don't know. It's
why is that? Why you feel that? So you jump to voice chat and
I don't think I did voice chat only once, maybe. Okay. And it was not on the Breaches of Meaning Discord. It was in some Eric Weinstein one or something. The European ones. And I guess I was just looking into the chat, seeing what's up. And then I always end up arguing with Struan about intuitionism.
Listen, text is not it. It's not it. It's limited, and it's I skimmed from time to time. I go over some channels in the Bridges of Meaning that I'm more invested in, and I'm limited to the knowledge of how to type and how to express myself in writing. I don't like to do that. The most time I typed for other people is for this Landau. Like I don't know, organizing stuff and typing stuff, and like, Teddy, what's happened to you? You never used to send emails or to have conversations with other people. I never sent text or emails. Like, I was afraid of that and didn't like it at all. So for me, the voice chat was the place how I got really involved in the Bridges of Meaning. But the voice chat is part of this element that we spoke before, the element that you put yourself and embarrass yourself kind of in front of other people. So I was always the first person who would turn the camera and like, here I am. Like, and like now I'm speaking to myself to my camera, and you're hiding behind this avatar.
Yeah, I know.
And
it's strange that you see yourself all the time, right? That is actually, I should probably turn that You can't
No,
change
yes,
that, right?
you can. I cannot because I'm recording.
Aha.
I tried it, and then then it's weird. It's just jumps all the time, and it's not that good.
But it keeps me.
Yeah.
You have to, and anyway, I've got a girlfriend back home in South Africa, and we've been together like 6 months before moving here to Prague. And so we've been doing this long distance thing, and it's really long distance. And also it was COVID at the time. So it is a strange, in some ways, all of my interaction is via a screen, right? Mm-hmm. And that weighs on you to some extent, or to a very great extent. And that's anyway. So the moment it was in person and I could be there, I immediately signed up, right? And even getting to this point of having a I would be much more comfortable just going there and meeting people, meeting you and all of that. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm now I want to go back home so that I can put my phone in a drawer and for a day, and nothing bad will happen, and my girlfriend won't be angry at me.
Yeah. No, it's this. Listen, it's influenced me as well. So although I'm organizing this conversations, and I'm posting stuff on the YouTube, and like trying to see that everybody's fine, and there's this SGRE that happening this Friday that I'm not part of, but still. And I found myself for the last 2 days just glued to the computer because I'm just doing stuff. And and then like today I was quite anxious for our conversation, because I said, like, I'm so tired of this, like this electronics. I just I don't want it. I don't want to sit in this chair any longer. And well, now our conversation is great. I know I will feel it afterward, because that's why I don't like the conversation late at night, because it's just so hard for me to
replay in your head, or
it's replaying, and really hard for me to fall asleep afterward. And I'm afraid I'm afraid of Landau. I'll tell you the truth. I'm afraid that I'll come there and there's like sea of people that
will
all
it be
of them,
a sea of people?
Well, 100 people.
Really,
it's for a normal person is a sea of people.
Okay.
And especially if you have connection with them. And all of them are open to experience and want just to talk about ideas.
Yeah.
And you just will get bombarded with conversation. And I just imagine myself like on steroids for 3 days, like trying to relax, and cannot, because there's so many interesting surrounding me.
Yes, but you know what? We should actually know that this will be a problem, right? We should somehow get this out of our system. Maybe doing these videos or having pre-estuary meetings is a good way to get it out of our system.
Yeah. I thought that it will be a release for this paralysis of analysis of a lot of new novelty. So at least that I know, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 people that coming to Landau, and I actually spoke with them and reacted to their smile and their laugh. Maybe it will lower that, but maybe not. Like, I don't know. I also don't know how it will influence my perception in Landau. So I'm also curious about that.
Yes. Well, people look different on screen as they do in person. That's already a strange. Like, I know this from my girlfriend, that having seen her for 6 months on a screen, and when I see her when I go visit home, she looks like a totally different person.
Yeah,
it is. And she has a 7-year-old daughter, and I need to get to know her basically again as well. She's like, she's very excited to see me again, and then at the moment she sees me, she's like, who's this guy?
yeah, children especially, they need the physicality, they need the presence and the attention of being there. And
that's also why I need to go back. so much.
Yeah,
that's a very uncomplicated thing.
Yeah, that's the problem. A certain problem with online and a certain problem with our community.
But it's not, I mean, our community has been aware of this earlier than any other I've seen, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think we're sort of the knife edge of this, and these meetings and the meetings, it was basically COVID that, you know, we were on this wave in 2019 already, I suppose, and it was just COVID that put a stop to it. I think, you know, if we were a real church, we would have. No, we're not a church. We will not be.
We're not a church.
Yeah.
Although it's weird because in my church, this Catholic church, I even said that I represent a certain type of people that will come more to the church in future years, because they are still especially like here, like very pessimistic about like the future in the church, and like the people are like, no, we people like me, the people who are trying to ask the questions about what it means, that this Trinity, and why you cross yourself the other way, they're coming your way. So prepare your answers.
You've got. Oh, I actually did a Peterson talk at my church at some point. Anyway, I'll tell that story to somebody sometime. But did you see Don't Look Up?
No. I resisted it as much as I could. I passed. I'm a film fanatic. I really like cinema, and probably the form of art that I know the best is probably cinema. So I don't know how I knew that it's a bad movie, but I remember going to the kitchen and back and seeing my mother watching this movie during the pandemic, and I stopped for a few seconds and just saw the self-congratulatory sneer on those people are playing their role like Leonardo DiCaprio. And this, no, it's not a good movie. It's like I can see that it's not a good movie. It's like, shit, what you trying to sell me? Like, scientist knows everything. Sure, okay.
No, but there was an interesting moment. I can maybe would you mind if I spoil it for you? This,
please. Right? I don't believe in spoilers at all.
Okay, cool. So there is this guy, and he's basically, so this whole movie is more or less like a you know how in the 90s or in the 2000s you had these movies where everybody was typecast as a certain thing. You had this geek, and you had this, you know, popular girl, and she's a cheerleader, and there's the guy with the football, whatever. Don't know about cheerleading or American football, anything. So it's just via movies that I got these things. And then it's basically like that, but it's trying to typecast sort of modern people in different roles, right? And there's the journalist and the scientist and the sort of cynical girl with the blue hair, and
and there's the industrialist, and
and then there's the strange sort of nihilistic Christian, right?
Oh, okay.
And he's that, I think he's the guy that plays the lead in Dune, is the actor that plays him. And so in the end, basically what's interesting is he turns out to be the hero of the story in a way, because the world goes to shit, okay? And in the final moments, they don't know what to do. They make themselves this great dinner, they get wasted. And now that they've been wasted, they've done their thing, now they don't know what to do with themselves, and the thing is going to land in 5 minutes, and they're all just waiting for there. They cannot distract themselves anymore, right? What do? And they like suppose we better pray, right? That's the only thing that's appropriate to do in this moment. And then they go around the table and not a single one knows how to actually pray, right? Except this one guy. And he's like, oh, okay. And it's sort of how he's, more or less like many people in our... anyway, so I suppose I'm more or less that guy. And already I'm enough of a stereotype that there is a a version of me in the movie. I suppose I would be able to do a prayer if the world ends, at least, So just that's interesting. It's that all of the craziness, and it ends up being the religious guy that's sort of the hero and saves the day at the climax. Bizarre. Anyway, so that made the movie actually worth it.
They actually saying that only when everything is lost, then we go to religion. But the problem is that you will never see the end. You will never see the edge of the earth, and you can look at this edge and saying, "Oh, like so this is the end." It's never like that. It's always, you will never find this this border that you shouldn't cross. You will never be in this situation as people imagine themselves, maybe in the Second World War and something, and saying, I will resist. I will know the point where to say no. And it's not the case. And Peterson makes that point. It's not the case. You will never see that line. It's not a line on the sand that you actually see.
Yeah.
So where should you stop? Who knows? Well, you should know. Your logos, your attention should know where to stop. And unless you train it and you train your way to see where to stop and you to say, no, I'm not saying those words. Unless you actually exercise that, you will never see that. Because, and that's, I don't know. I don't know where exactly. Well, I'm assuming that you grew up in South Africa, that the situation over there is not as well. It's turmoil and there's more crime than in other Western countries, and shit is going down. But it's never in front of you. It's never there. It's sometimes you can see it somewhere in the corner of some alley and haphazardly, but it's never like, okay, it's happening here, I can stop it. It's never that. When you getting shot, and I got shoot at in the military, when you face with horrible situation, it's never in front of you of like a movie. It's always elusive. And if you look around you, it's always looks fine. People act strangely, but it's fine.
Including even in a war situation.
Yes. It's weird. You entering a room, and so I was speaking today. I don't remember to whom, but I also I already forgot about the people I'm speaking to. I was speaking today about with a person about my second Lebanon war experience, and it's such a mundane experience. It's such a regular day, and you just so we enter Lebanon, and we just occupied a few buildings to guard against, I don't know, something. So so you entered a house that people used to live there, and it's just a normal house, and there's nothing wrong with, like, it's no, the only wrong thing is like you look at your bodies and there's like a lot of military people inside a normal house.
Yeah.
And then I'm entering the bathroom. And in the bathroom, they wrote to us on the mirror.
Yeah.
Dear IDF, Israeli Defense Force, if you need to use our home, please use it as well, but just please keep it clean and don't destroy everything. And we run away to the north, and God bless and be safe, or something like that. And it was.
So what was that experience then?
Yeah, it was surreal. It was surreal to see that, but 5 minutes after that, you just forget about it. It's only became really, really surreal when I start to retell it many years after. Like it was 20 years ago, almost 17 years ago, this war. And now I'm retelling it to you, and it's weird. But unless I utter the words, I reflect on it historically, not just historically to the country, but historically to my experience. Only then I can see that the weirdness of it. So
I have a similar experience when coming overseas, right? You just being from South Africa, so far away from everything old, you get the feeling that it will feel like a fairy tale if you get into Paris or Prague or something like that. And it really isn't. It's just another place, just like every other place.
It's just a supermarket. And the food is different, and there's a different label on it. But there's like the same cashier, like sitting there, like.
Yeah. But even just the pure corporality of it, just it's a stone like every other stone, and you walk like every other, just the normality of it it was a shock to me as soon as I got off the plane, because the plane is a bit of you can imagine that after that grueling, it's like 11-hour flight to Europe, that once you get off there, you can feel like, yes, okay, now I'm out of the subway. Oh, okay, it's just another place. But one thing just to tie, I suppose, a similar thing is maybe spending a bit more time sometimes helps. Like we went to Sartre the first time I came overseas, and I was more or less disappointed, even though I didn't understand. Everything was both ununderstandable because I don't know how the roads work, and don't understand the trains and subways and stuff, and cannot order any food or anyway, you're so lost, especially here Czech is hard. But then we ended up spending one day at Chartres, the cathedral, and that stayed with me. After a while, you just like you're there long enough that you start just drinking and hanging out and talking about other things, and then it sort of catches your attention. And just being in that space for long enough eventually seared it into my mind as a very meaningful experience, or a really and it is maybe, in retrospect, of course, there is this, you need to create a narrative, but there's this weird danger of nostalgia about that, right? And I don't know how to talk deeply about nostalgia. It's something that I'm afraid of in myself. I tend to wish too much that that I'm still younger, right? So it is an emotion that I feel holds me back in a way, but maybe it is teaching one something, and maybe that experience that you had while you were there was the real thing. It just strikes you and then you move on, and the next thing is just like all places are just the same. They're all places with air and floors. And
yes,
I'm talking too wildly, I know.
No, Jamie, you are excellent. It's so fun to be in a conversation with you and to explore those topics, because You're a very thoughtful guy, and I appreciate that much. I really want us to get to this nostalgia, nostalgia conversation and nostalgia exploration, because I'm haunted by nostalgia most of my life, and I do want to explore it. But
and this
is the but. This is the but. But and this is the cliffhanger for everybody's listening. Yeah, if they're still listening. If this one guy is still listening to the end.
That's a strange it's a strange moment being in the conversation with you and you addressing the audience.
Yeah, it's I'm breaking the fourth wall. Yep, exactly.
Yes.
So
Nice.
so I do want us to continue our conversation. I don't know if we'll manage before Landau. Probably, because I'm getting I'm finishing with going all over with all of the people that already done once, and now I'm thinking about redoing people again.
Yes.
And I already have a conversation with René next week and Stefan, and probably I'll do something with you as well. If not, we'll see each other in Landau. And if we'll not manage, because there'll be so many people interesting that we want to talk to, if we won't manage to have this conversation about nostalgia in Landau, I will definitely want us to continue it afterwards. So,
No,
so
I mean,
listen,
there's just more and more of this stuff. There's no.
That's fine. That's fine. Because I enjoyed our talk really, really much. So
yeah, me too.
So and it's been like 2 hours, and I really need to go to sleep.
Yes, but I wanna try sort of landing the plane so that you don't think about this all night. There must be a way to exit so that it doesn't replay.
No,
don't you think so?
No, there's no way, because it's not the topic. It's not that. It's not that. It's the fact that there were human on the other side, and he and I exchanged, got into a dialogos, a true dialogos. And it's rare, and it's so exciting. It's almost not on the same level, but it's like a small preview of how it is to fall in love.
Yeah, I understand.
And it's so exciting that to people that high neuroticism as myself, it's quite actually difficult for us to get to sleep after that.
I see.
So it's not the topics. It's not something that you can say right now.
Yeah.
Because it's too late for that. So the best that we can do is to say thank you and
right. Thank you and goodbye to the people.
Yeah, goodbye to the people.